Happy Sunday morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sunday, April 5th, 2020. Just your morning news. I know there's not many people following me, and for the folks who are the haters, you know who you are, and your opinion means nothing to me. This is from the New York Times today. Um, today, April 5th, 2020. Front page. 430,000 people have traveled from China to U.S. since coronavirus surfaced. Beer cold. There were 1,300 direct flights to 17 cities before President Trump's travel restrictions. Since then, nearly 40,000 Americans and other authorized travelers have made the trip. Some this past week, and many with spotty screening. So, back in like '06, there was a comedian who said how great of a job the TSA was doing. That they sent 25 fake bombs through 25 different airports, and the TSA didn't even get any of them. So that should tell you who's really protecting our country. This one is from Brooklyn ICU. This is Code Blue. The Brooklyn ICU fights for each life in the beer cold surge. Nearly every patient was on a ventilator. Some were in their 80s, some were in their 30s. Medical workers were falling fast and had no respectful and had to be resourceful. The alternative, one said, is death. Of course, they have to add something about, in the news analysis section here, Trump proceeds with post-impeachment purge amid pandemic. It's nonsense. That's nonsense. I did not like the last administration. I did not like him. I didn't feel he was putting the country in the right direction, but he was my president, and I stood by him. As an independent, I stood by him. Now, he did things that were wrong. He did things that were wrong. So did the State Department. But I still stood by them. So this nonsense needs to stop. There's another one here about Italy. It says, in Italy, going back to work may depend on having the right antibodies. Weighing an idea that might once have been regulated to science fiction, Italy once again finds itself in the unfortunate vanguard of Western democracies grappling with the beer cold. So now you might have to have an appropriate blood type with an appropriate antibody in your blood in order to go back to work. That's crazy. That's crazy. This one is the killer flu of 1918. It's funny how immediately when they stopped calling this the beer cold or the blank blank virus from Blanca, that now it's the killer flu of 1918, a Philadelphia story. A brutal toll taken by the flu that claimed 20,000 lives in the city has not been forgotten as Philadelphia braces for the worst of the beer cold pandemic. And there's a picture here on the back of a trolley. It says spit spreads death. So, I understand that people wanted open borders. I get it. But there's a responsible way to do that and an irresponsible way to do that. My grandfather came here from Italy. Went through all his screenings, became a United States citizen, worked from the time he got here to the time he died. I think he was retired for 6 months. 6 months. Think about that. Died in 1971. He was born 1898, for God's sakes. So he fought against his will in World War I. He's 16 years old with a rifle in his hand, forced to fight for something he didn't believe in. And as soon as it was over, he got the hell out of there because, well, it was a smart thing to do. He came here. My father was not allowed to speak Italian in his house because he was born here in America. It's about being proud of where you're born, where you're from. I understand a lot of these folks are coming here from countries that are no good. I understand that those countries have fallen to cartels and mafioso type mob rule. But the answer to that is not more mob rule. The answer to that is conversation and discussion. There's an old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And that's true. Well, you can lead people to knowledge, but if they're so brainwashed that what they see is on this, right here, the New York Times. I mean, look at this. This one here, you know, just the way it's written makes you wonder whose side they're on. So this is, if you go and look and you get the New York Times and you go to page 810, Trump urges coronavirus patients to take unproven drug. Ladies and gentlemen, in South Africa, where this hydroxychloroquine has been used for decades to prevent malaria, none of these folks got infected with the beer cold because their bodies used that drug to create antibodies against it. You know, nobody wants to do their own research. They're sheeple. I've been doing a lot of, I'm home, so I've been doing a lot of listening to old school radio. And I was listening to a gentleman who used to be in Eager, Arizona. He's incredible. He's a very smart man. Served in the military, 2 branches of the military, Army, Navy, was in Navy intelligence. Everything he said has been proven. The stuff he was talking about back in the early 90s is coming to fruition right now. He talks about JFK. He talks about Lincoln. If you go out on the street right now and you ask any random people, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter, ask them what party Lincoln was affiliated with. And the odds are the answer you're going to get is Democrat. Lincoln was not a Democrat, he was a Republican. The first party to elect an African American as a congressman was the Republican Party in a landslide. Not because they were, not because they were looking to hand out things to people. The man was smart, knew what he was doing, was charismatic. If you ask most people what party MLK Jr. was affiliated with, most people will tell you Democrat, and that's not true either. He was a registered Republican. I'm not for either party. I'm telling you this. I'm for who's going to do the job the best. Now, do I agree with everything the president says? No. Do I think sometimes he should just shut up, man? You're not on a TV set here. But there's other things that he says that are 100% true. And what he did to that reporter, that Peter guy, was 100% right. Was 100% right. The fact is, that guy was trying to bring the fear and the panic level up. And, he called it like he saw it. You're trying to spread fear and panic. I'm trying to keep the country calm so we don't look like Italy, so we don't look like Spain, so we don't look like these countries in the Middle East that are having people drop dead every minute of every day. This is serious. And the media is still playing around like they're they're yielding their father's gun and spinning it around. And oh, it went off, whoops. No. JFK had a speech. It was a 19-minute, 22-second speech. He gave it at the Waldorf Astoria, and the speech was called "The President and the Press." And in that speech, he said, a lot of great things, but one of the things that stuck in my mind after I read it, after I watched it, and after I listened to it, was that the press has a very important job in this country, and that is to get the information to the people without opinions. Their job is to put the facts out there and let the people make the decision, because it's the people's government. John F. Kennedy knew what was going on behind the scenes. He was a Navy man. He saw what the Navy did back in World War II. He saw the future. He knew what was happening. He listened to Eisenhower. When Eisenhower gave his farewell speech, he said, you have to keep your eye on the military-industrial complex, and they need to be shut down because they're funding both sides of every war. Just to feed your children to a machine, and you'll never get anything back out of it. So that's the New York Times. When you look at papers like this, let's pull up New York Post, see what happens. New York Post 4/5/20. See what happens. NewYorkPost.com. Here we go. All right, so disturbing photos show how body bags fill hallways in Brooklyn Hospital amid beer cult. That's the first thing they put on there. They don't put on there how we're trying to fight it, what we should do to try to fight it. Immediately showing body bags of lost individuals, lost human beings. It's absurd. You can look at all of this. Like, here's the news. Wisconsin voters still expected to head to polls Tuesday despite the outbreak. Over 1,000 doctors, nurses heading toward New York City fight the virus at the epicenter. Cuomo mourns niece of ex-wife, Kerry Kennedy, and her son. Now that is something I didn't know. I did not know that Cuomo's ex-wife was related to the Kennedys. That's amazing. Meanwhile, off in the distance here, you see mobsters, killers, rapists seeking prison release because of the beer cult. On what planet, in a time like this, when your police force is stretched extraordinarily thin, scraped like butter across too much bread, they can barely keep themselves safe. You've got 8 million people packed on an 8-mile island, surrounded by water. Eventually those people are going to want to break out of there. And unfortunately, because they're so close-quartered, how many of them are carriers and not even know it? And yet they're going to come rolling out into Long Island. They're going to roll out up into Connecticut and New York State. They're going to roll out to New Jersey. And it's going to blow this thing way out of proportion. Literally. These papers have lost what they're supposed to do. These papers are supposed to give us the news, the information, not their opinion. Like this cover here, it gave us the information, but it shouldn't be. We should not be sensationalizing the pictures of dead bodies in bags, on stretchers in the hospitals, because you're giving us a false sense of security and you're causing panic. This is the New York Post. This is a paper of record. You're sensationalizing this, and every one of these papers has something against the president. The president wanted to close this down a long time ago. Back on January 1st, he said, I want to close the borders. And everyone said, you're xenophobic. That's anti-Asian. That's racist. What are you, nuts? These people are nuts. These people are nuts. I'm not even kidding. These people are nuts. This lefty, progressive monstrosity that you have allowed to take you over and and get rid of all of your intelligence is really just awful. It's awful. You sit here and you mock people who pray. You mock the people who always, even the Daily Mail. Perfect example. Daily Mail. U.S. records 1,497 deaths in 24 hours. Let's see, because there's so many damn pop-ups. The highest single day toll of any country so far. Now, we also have a lot more people here than Italy and Spain and all these other countries. We have 320 million people here. Of course the numbers are going to go up, but because this is what they're putting out, this is what we get. So, with almost half in New York City. So that means almost 750 people died in New York City in one day. As cases rise to 310,000. That's 10% of our population, ladies and gentlemen. That's like 10% of our population, right? I mean, 310,000 times 10 is 310 million people. And the death tolls hit 8,500, leaving hospitals overwhelmed. Again, pictures of things that shouldn't be here. We've got 2 graphs, the number of new U.S. infecteds per day, the number of deaths per day. A doctor standing here outside looks like he's crying, and then they show a trailer. They show a refrigerated trailer lined with, shelving that's obviously built from high-quality plywood, it looks like. And, I mean, the coronavirus latest U.S. cases, 311,632. Deaths, 8,503. 1,497 died in a day. We have to get back to work. Donald Trump raises the prospect of lifting the lockdown, knowing people will get infected, because we can't go on like this, and he will take difficult decision. And of course they've got to word it like that. He doesn't want to put us back in jeopardy. Here you go. Law and Order fears for New York City as nearly 10,000 NYPD and FDNY members call out sick amid the rise of burglaries, while virus death toll doubles in the city to 757. So, again, if you've got 10,000 FDNY and NYPD members calling out because they are afraid to come into work or they're not feeling well, and you want to release criminals? Chicago just released the man who raped a toddler in a McDonald's bathroom. A man who's here unlawfully, who is not a citizen, had been deported 3 or 4 times prior to this. They just released him onto the streets. You really think that that's a smart idea? CPD, you think that's a smart idea? How about the prosecutor there? You think that's a smart idea? It's not. And then, of course, there's another one here, more fear-mongering. How coronavirus feeds on the poor. Smartphone data reveals high-income earners can stay at home during pandemic, while low-income workers have to travel to work and expose themselves. That's nonsense. That's nonsense. I'm going to tell you right now, because I'm a low-income worker. And I stay off the road, and I don't go anywhere. And when I need to go to the store, I bundle up, I wrap my face, I go to the store, I follow the appropriate code of conduct, and I get back home. And when I walk in my door, I spray myself down with Lysol, I spray my door down with bleach. End of story. This is all about still dividing us. At what point the Daily Mail, the New York Times, the New York Post, MSNBC, CNN, all of these bureaucratic, George Soros-backed monstrosities, when do you think they're going to stop doing this? How long? now CNN's got more cases in their offices. The elites got hit first. We don't know why. We know why. We know why. We know why this is suddenly happening. Because the man got really close. The man got really close to exposing everything, and now you've got to push it back down. And the folks that are these elites, they don't care who they hurt. Well, the problem is, you're 1% of the population on the world. That's at 70 million people, 7 million people. You've got 7.6 billion people that you're affecting. Those numbers ain't too great, are they? Those odds are stacked against you. I'm just getting this out there because I got news for you. Here we go. This is another one. It says Dr. Birx. This and for some reason next to this, which is Dr. Birx now warns Americans not to go to the grocery store or pharmacy unless it's essential during the next 14 days, with coronavirus hotspots set to hit the peak death rate in a week. But right next to that, in the Daily Mail, is a picture of beautiful Gwyneth Paltrow. Hints at sexual frustration in isolation. I don't care about your sexual frustration, darling. You've got millions and millions and millions of dollars. I'm sitting here with nothing. My neighbors are sitting here with nothing. And you want me to be concerned about your frustration? Ugh. So it says here, Dr. Birx, coordinator of the White House Beer Cold Task Force, said the next 2 weeks are essential to breaking through the outbreak. Dr. Birx advised that even grocery stores and pharmacies are best avoided during the coming 2 weeks. She warned residents in Colorado, Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania, in particular, to stay in place. Stay in place. Models show that the United States could hit the peak of hotspots like New York, pictured at the bottom, right? But in hospitals, but maybe coming sooner. I mean, this is what's going on. New Orleans now has the highest coronavirus death rate in the United States, almost double the rate of New York, because residents suffer with obesity, diabetes, and high blood pressure. But they're not mentioning that the mayor of New Orleans told everybody to join in the Mardi Gras parade after the federal government said, maybe you should cancel all your events because this is going to be bad. Are we not getting it? Are we not getting through to you folks? When the president shut down travel to China and said we should be banning all major events, New York, February 2nd, was telling people to go to the parties, go to the Chinese New Year celebration, use the subway. What are you, nuts? It amazes me, and then we don't know why. We don't know why we're in this monstrosity mess of a boat that unfortunately is sinking, and it's starting to take its toll on people here. You can see it in the way people are acting and the way people are responding. I have a neighbor who wants to go to the shore, and I'm like, well, why would you do that? You know, you're risking spreading the virus. But he doesn't care. No one's going to tell me I can't go anywhere. That's nonsense. I don't want to be stuck here. I'm 10 miles from an epicenter. I don't want to be stuck here, but I am. So, God bless, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to need it in the next 2 weeks. Take care.